Hello, future tubers! I promise this is the first take, and welcome back to Let's Play or introduce a new series, Fire Emblem Thracia 776 or Fire Emblem 5 for the Super Nintendo. So, we're actually live streaming right now, so you may notice some live tubers and Twitchians chatting with us while we're getting our introduction here. This video probably won't make it to in actual story or gameplay like Chapter 1 or anything. Because what I want to do right now is introduce sort of some mechanics and features of Thracia 776, as well as the translation patch and a couple changes that we have installed with some ROM editing, basically. So, yeah. This is episode 0. Episode 1 will be the official read the story and play the game stuff. But if you're really curious, Super Nintendo, Fire Emblem 5... It's kind of in the middle of Fire Emblem 4, so if you watch the Genealogy of the Holy War series, remember that time jump without spoiling everything, but you probably should know the story continues on in the time gap. So after the bad thing happens to Sigurd and his army, at some point, and honestly, the intro, if you read it, does cover a lot of that. This is going to follow Leif, who was in the second generation of Genealogy. He was one of the, not main characters, but a strong side character along Sigurd's son in saving the continent. So this is going to follow the time period following Leif in Leonster and, well, Thracia, essentially. It's the kingdom in the larger continent. I think it's Jugdrol or something from Fire Emblem 4, whatever. Point is, this is like a smaller, more standard kind of Fire Emblem story rather than a massive generational Fire Emblem 4 thing. So anyway, we'll talk more about the story later on, but it's still Super Nintendo, it's still Fire Emblem, but a lot of things have been tweaked for Thracia 776. In fact, it's relatively notorious as one of the more difficult Fire Emblems. So, hopefully the game doesn't crash in the background here, but I'll leave it going so there's some music. We're going to talk a little bit, or we're going to switch over to Firefox mode. We're going to spend a little bit of time on Serene's Forest, which is where I usually recommend you look for usually accurate information. The wiki, the Fire Emblem wiki's not necessarily 100% accurate. Serene's Forest is generally, I haven't seen a lot of mistakes here, so this is generally where I'd say you should start. And we're going to talk about some mechanics and changes between the different Fire Emblem games. I'm going to be presenting this as if you have not played Thracia 776, which, spoilers, I have not played Thracia 776, so it's more of an intro for release dates. Yeah, end of the Super Nintendo, definitely the late era of Super Nintendo. Assuming that date is correct. Or, no, just prove me wrong, Serene's Forest is incorrect. But I'm assuming that's correct, and it was just it's probably why it didn't get translated to English. It was end of the era. Anyway, before we talk about the mechanics, which are vastly different, I want to talk about the patch. So we're using the Little Manster complete Thracia 776 menu and script translation. So at the moment, it's October 2020 recording time. We'll see how many months go by before this gets uploaded. And last year, 2019, the Project Exile full translation patch was released, which we could probably link over here if it works. This was like the big one, and it was the first one, I believe, that had a full script translation as well as menus. And before that, you kind of had one or the other, and there was like some bugs and stuff, making it, fairly difficult to play the game in English if you didn't speak Japanese and wanted to know the story. So, Project Exile, last year, this is what got me started on Fire Emblem 4 Genealogy of the Holy War, because I'm like, oh, cool, now I can play them both. And then, time goes by and 2020 happens. So, I haven't gotten around to it, and it's been so long, there's already another gigantic update to it, basically. So, we're going to use this patch specifically, but it is mostly just based on the Project Exile patch, for the most part. So, you can read more about it. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, but these guys have definitely done some little improvements. There's some script revisions. They're using some more canonical names for characters, so I do apologize if you're a fan of a certain specific translation of English anglicization of Japanese names. We're just going to use whatever this one gives us, which... Oh, it crashed again. Oh, no, it didn't crash. Just restart. Whew. I thought the game crashed in the background. But yeah, it uses Fire Emblem Heroes, which is the money-stealing phone game that I'm never going to really talk about in depth. But it uses the official names from the mobile game for the characters' names, which does make some sense. Change some fonts, some 2 name changes. That's not even that bad. They've rearranged some menus for dodging, and we're going to talk a little bit about what this kind of thing is, like a FCM stat. We'll learn about that in the mechanics section here. More in-game descriptions of items and skills, which is really good because a lot of them are unique to this game. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of the main stuff. We're also playing with a quality of life patch, so it's not just a purely script. There's some technically gameplay changes, so I'm not a purist in that sense that we're playing at 100% hard copy of the original. The game is already quite difficult. I'm not really afraid of making it a little bit easier. So we're going to be able to, you know, change animation modes between, you know, the full animations and the map animations. There's the equip item preview, so normally you can't see what an enemy has equipped unless you look at their screen, like, you know, most games up to probably 3 houses or so. But some of this stuff is just gonna make it a little bit easier to see what's going on, who can talk to who. We can display HP bars on the map. We can display crit percentage in battle and weapon experience in the menu. Like, I have that on. I've got this one enabled, it's optional. I've got this one enabled, it's optional. And I've also enabled repositioning of units. Thracia has this bad habit of basically mandatory putting your units in the place it wants rather than letting you choose. Like more recent games, at the beginning of a battle, you choose where to put everybody. Thracia, there's maps where it like splits your army in half, and you don't get to choose which units go to which side. So if you're not lucky and you don't know what you're doing, you can end up with a side with all your fragile mages or whatever, and then on the other side you can have all your tanks and physicals, and it's just practically impossible, or not impossible, but more difficult than it maybe should be. So we're going to play with a little tweak to that. And there's some options that we did not include that can give you 0% growth or double weapon experience growth. I didn't turn those on or anything. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, we're not playing randomizer or anything. So that's the patch. So big shout out to, of course, the Little Manster team and the Project Exile team for all the hard work. These guys, I don't know, man. I've done some sprite editing and some text editing. Oof, it's a lot of work. So good job on them. That's what's going to bring us here. Now, for some mechanics, just, you know, we're already 7 minutes in here. I don't want to spend an hour on it, but let's talk a little bit about what's unique to Thracia 776 and what we need to remember when we start playing the game. In the first few chapters, it's not going to be super difficult, but we need to learn quick because the game gets very hard. It's more difficult than Genealogy of the Holy War, and probably way more difficult than the Game Boy Advance or Path of Radiance is comparatively very easy. So if you're familiar with those kinds of games, this is going to be a bit of a jump up. So, oh, I did that thing where I touched my speed button. Hold on. That sounds normal. We have some speed up if we need it for later. Okay, so first off, let's do some easy stuff right off the bat. We're playing a Super Nintendo Fire Emblem. Growth rates are generally across the board bad. If you're familiar with the more recent games, 3DS, Fire Emblem, Three Houses, that kind of stuff, generally the older games are averaging somewhere around maybe 2 stat ups per level if you add everything up together. Whereas the more modern games are closer to like 3 or 4 stat ups per level. So generally growths are smaller, although there are some specific situations where they're still pretty good. We actually, one thing I have to apologize for is we don't have slides of all the stats like I did for Genealogy. I'll get those worked down eventually, but that's another project. But for now, stats are generally, keep in mind the growths are fairly low. That's all I'm really trying to say. There's lots and lots of characters. So, you know, there's growth characters, there's base characters that are high base, low growths, there's the other way around. You know, we'll figure that out as we go. I'll put it on screen once I draw it all up. There are support bonuses. It's not really like the modern CBA ranking, though. They're just sort of set ahead of time, and they're also one way. So, Leaf, our main character, supports lots of other people and gives them 10 accuracy and avoid and critical evade. But that doesn't necessarily mean they give him the same bonuses, and it should be 3 square radius like normal at least. So there's going to be a bit of work trying to remember stuff like this. It's a fairly small bonus, but at least we don't have to worry about like who S ranks this person, who A ranks that person. We can just, and we don't have to worry about pairing people up and getting the kids and all that nonsense. This game is, it's a fairly simple support system. So just keep in mind they're one direction only, and it's just a +10 to your accuracy avoid critical stats. So that's not too bad, right? We're not gonna like go into how to recruit everybody or anything at this point, but I will have some guides on the side so I don't miss too much, hopefully. Like a certain wind tome in Genealogy of the Holy War, which I'll never live down. Let's see. So mounting, just this is kind of easy little thing. There's lots of mounted classes, like pretty much every Fire Emblem game, but you can dismount, and when you're dismounted, you will lose these bonuses. So you get 3 of your movement from being on your horse, or your dragon, or your Pegasus. Dismounting will lose you those stats, as well as everything else in here. So, good to know, right? Dismounting's kind of important. The stat cap, I believe, for everybody is just 20 in all stats. So unlike most Fire Emblems where, oh, like a Berserker has a 30 strength cap and a Sage has like a, I don't know, say a 15 strength cap or whatever it actually is. They're all just 20 for everybody. So I'm pretty sure everyone can get to 20 strength if they had the growths and the promotion gains to get there. They probably don't, but in theory, maxes are easy. You don't have to worry about that too much. Growth rates are small. Mounting is more complicated. All right, you know, that gives you a feel for the characters. Next up, let's talk. I'm kind of going through all the relatively easy stuff first here. Let's talk about skills. Unique skills for Genealogy. So I'm coming from playing Genealogy, moving into Thracia, and if you have only played the more recent games, some of these skills are going to be kind of wildly unfamiliar. So there's not actually that many. We can go through them fairly quickly. I'll start at the top. Makes sense, right? So Wrath, I think, is still called Wrath, but it definitely does not have a 100% activation anymore. Nowadays, this type of skill is not a guaranteed crit, and it's generally like your HP has to be below 50% kind of thing. So in Thracia, Wrath is always a critical on your counterattack. If an enemy attacks you, you will always do a critical attack on your counter. You're not good. So on player phase, when you attack, you don't necessarily get this. But on enemy phase, when they attack you, if you survive, you will guarantee a crit. Very, very, very powerful. So that's, if an enemy has it, bad news bears. Although there are skills that prevent criticals. We'll get there. Prayer, luck ×3 is pretty generous. I think it's just luck % nowadays. But if you're about to die, I don't even know. Normally this one kills you if you're at 1 HP. It's called Miracle nowadays, right? But this might just be luck ×3% clearly, and you just dodge it. I'm not 100% sure. We'll figure that one out later. In Genealogy, there was some HP, like it was like 11 HP minus... It was 11 minus your current HP. So if you had 1 HP... Oh, however it worked out. I forget the exact math, but it was different than this, let's just say. Let's just keep going here. Elite is your Paragon nowadays, just double experience. We're not playing on Elite mode, or we won't be. So, ×2 XP, same as nowadays. That's nice. Big Shield is kind of like Pavise, and there was something like this in Genealogy. But this is much more powerful than the modern Aegis Pavise kind of split. Instead of, like, level or whatever % chance it is, of nowadays it's like half physical damage or half magic damage. This is just you take no damage. So this is an overpowered broken skill that's a real pain in the neck. We saw it in Genealogy plenty of times and it foiled us to no end. Dance in Genealogy, I think it was a 4-way dance. You dance for all 4 people around you. Did the game? It's just a very quiet part of the game. Don't worry. The music will be back soon. So yeah, dance I think is just 1 character this time, just refresh 1 person. Charisma, this is pretty normal looking kind of skill. +10 accuracy and avoid within 3 tiles. In Genealogy of the Holy War, leadership worked like this for Sigurd and Seliph, mostly. Although there was scaled rather than just 10, but I think there was charisma for a couple characters as well. Moonlight Sword, nowadays called Luna. I think it's also just half defense nowadays, but anyway. Skill % to go 0 defense and guaranteed hit. That's pretty powerful. Sun Sword, skill % to basically drain HP. Nowadays, I think it's half HP as well. but it's a guaranteed steal all HP attack. Very powerful. These are much better in the old games than they are. They've been nerfed a lot in the new games. So you've got Luna, you've got Sol. Charge, I think this is also called a cost in the old games. This one's kind of weird. So you need to have higher attack speed than your enemy and HP greater than your enemy, your current HP. If that's true, then 100% of the time you will gain an additional round of combat. So round of combat means like starting from the beginning. You attack, they attack, you attack if you're faster. Because, you know, you have the attack speed advantage. So theoretically you're going player attack, player attack, and then charge triggers, and then you go again. Player attack, player attack. And as long as your HP stays higher than the enemy, that continues until you win. Or you die, which could perhaps happen. So this is a complicated skill that definitely can confuse you if you're not ready. Next up, stealing. So mechanics for thieving is a little different than some games. You can steal everything. I think even equipped weapons, which is unusual. Very rarely can you do that. But you need your your thief has to have more speed than the enemy. That's kind of normal. And you need your build, your constitution, to be higher than the weight of the weapon. So I think in like the Game Boy Advance versions, you could steal unequipped. Uh-oh, it crashed. Can I just reset it maybe? This did happen a couple times in the setup. No, it just crashes the whole... Oh no, it's not even crashed. It's actually my fault. I must have pressed some button that changes the frame rate. Hold on, I can fix it. I don't know what I'm doing here. Playback rate. No. You know, whatever. I'm just going to close the emulator, start it over again. I don't know what I did. It's not like I'm pressing any buttons. I have a shortcut on my my gamepad that will let us speed things up, you know, quickly if we need to. But anyway, there we go. We're back. We still need a little bit more chit-chat before we can get to the gameplay. And I like to have the music. Okay, so... sorry. We talked about charge. We talked about steal. You need this. You need the attack speed and the build to steal the item, and you can steal pretty much anything, assuming you're fast and strong. Or no, not strong. See, sometimes it's the thief's strength versus the item's weight. It's the strength build stat versus the enemy's weight stat. So that's kind of the unique... Gotta remember that when we get to stealing. Awareness is essentially nihil, which cancels crits normally, but it actually doesn't this time. So it cancels enemy skills. Also, did the music just get way louder this time around? Nope. That was my bad too. Shouldn't be. If the music is really loud, you guys let me know. Oh man, I'm just all over the place today. So, awareness cancels enemy skills, which is good if they have something like Luna or Sol and you don't want to die. So, that's good. Bargain, pretty standard thing. Buying for half price, okay, we've seen that kind of stuff before, no big deal. Ambush is like Vantage, I think is the modern name of this. Except, again, Vantage is like a... I think it's HP at 50%. Can they steal HP and MP based on the enemy? Which skill? Sol will steal HP. There is no MP in this game. If you're thinking about Shining Force, it's a little different. So, ambush means you will attack first when the enemy attacks you. So instead of the regular, you know, enemy, player, enemy for an enemy attack, it goes player first and then enemy maybe twice, depending on your pursuit. Why does my volume keep going up? Is Windows... It's Spooktober. I've got a ghost. It's changing my settings in the background while I'm looking at this window. Anyway, sorry guys. So we talked about bargain, ambush. Life is blessing nowadays, where you just recover, you just regenerate a little bit every turn. That's nice, 10 to 20% healing. It's all good. Shining Force, Fire Emblem, similar, not quite the same. And this is a specifically crazy version of Fire Emblem. And then Shooting Star Sword is now called Astra. Skill percent chance to activate 5 hits in a row. Nowadays, it's 5 hits at half strength, I believe, and might even be skill divided by 2%. It's very, very, very powerful. So in the old games like this, that's a lot of damage 5 times. And if you also have like a Brave effect on your weapon, a Brave Sword that does double attacks already, this will be 10. So that's crazy if it triggers. And then, basically, speaking of the Brave effect, you can get that on any weapon with the Adept skill, also known as Continue, which is your attack speeds percent. So unlike most of them are skill percent, or level percent, or luck percent, this one's your attack speed. So speed minus your negative from your weapon weight, and that just gives you a free attack. So normally, your attack, enemy attack, your attack. With this, you could go your attack, enemy attack, and if your attack speed is high, you're probably getting your pursuit second round, so attack, enemy attack, and then another attack if you're really lucky. So you can get 4 attacks in 1 round of combat, which is pretty cool. Okay, that's all the skills. Not too complicated, just I'll expect your essay on it by Monday at 9 o'clock. But yeah, now we gotta get into some of the more complicated stuff. Everyone take a drink, everyone have a little snack. We're only 20 minutes into this explanation. We got an hour to go. 40 minutes to get to an hour. Okay, we're going to talk about some mechanics. We're going to do a little bit of math. Put on your math hats. So, there's a lot of things here to remember, and I know we could just play the game and figure it out naturally, but they'll just ruin your life. First up, I do know, for sure, status ailments never wear off. So all your normal status ailments, poison, take damage every turn, sleep, basically never do anything, berserk, attack your allies, stone is kind of unique to this game, I believe, but it's basically the same as sleep. They all last forever, but only one can be applied at a time. So if you are put to sleep, and then somebody poisons you, you are no longer asleep, you are now poisoned instead. So that's a pretty key mechanic that's surprisingly important. If you silence an enemy caster with a long-range tome, like bolting or something, because you don't want to die, so you silence it, and then you put it to sleep, thinking, now we're double safe. Well, I guess it's asleep, you're okay, but if you poisoned it, suddenly you could cast magic again. So you'd lose out your silence. So anyway, that's kind of an important thing. Also, when you are asleep, most of your stats get set to 0. That's good to know. Capturing enemies... Oh, this is unique to Thracia, and it's definitely going to take some work to talk about this. Anyone can attempt to capture an enemy. You need your constitution or build to be higher than the enemy's. So, mounted units will always have a 20 constitution for capture purposes and cannot be captured themselves. So your cavalry, your wyverns, they're immune to being captured. Also, the enemy will try to capture your units sometimes. It's a specific use case there, not very often. But they can, technically. But your guys, you might choose, like, I would like to capture an enemy, because if you can capture them, which essentially means kill them, like with the blunt end of your sword kind of thing, you drop their HP to 0, you have now captured them, same as a rescue in other games. You've done like a aggressive rescue. You can strip them of all their items, and then throw them away, and then they disappear. You don't have to keep their body around. You can just toss them in the garbage or whatever. So the idea is, to do the capture, your stats are halved while you're doing the attack. Strength, magic, skill, speed, defense. So you've got to be pretty confident you're going to not die, and, that's where the math gets really involved. And if you manage to essentially drop their HP to 0, normally that would kill them. If it's a capture attack, you capture them, then you can trade some items around, and that's pretty neat. The game doesn't give us very much money or free stuff in general, so it's far more important that we fairly regularly capture enemies to get their weapons so we have weapons, and also sometimes sell those weapons so we can buy better stuff. So this is kind of a key mechanic that's... I don't think you need to capture everything or anything. You don't need to go too crazy. And this is where being more experienced in the game makes a huge difference, because you know what's worth money and what's worth capturing and what's not worth. I will just capture whatever I can, and I'll try to pay attention, but, I don't really know what I'm doing the same. But I'm at least aware of the mechanic. While you're carrying an enemy or an ally, your stats remain halved. if your build, if the carried character's build is more than half of the user's build, or +5 if you're mounted, your movement is also half. So you will lose a lot of stats, and if your build is not a lot higher than your targets, you will also lose half of your movement speed. So basically, capturing is your risky maneuver that lowers your stats and makes it so you're kind of stuck there holding on to this enemy combatant. Then it basically takes another turn to strip them of their items and get rid of them, and then it's like you killed an enemy, but you took 2 turns, and it was risky, and you lost some stats for temporarily. So it's a kind of a gamble kind of maneuver to get more greed, to get more weapons. Also, I realize I'm talking about this, it's not showing up on screen. Now it's back. Sorry, I had this all highlighted here. I don't know why that was not updating. I'm assuming you guys were just watching the skill screen there for a second. Weird. Anyway, it's all on screen now. I haven't gotten very far. Attack speed, your speed, minus your weight, minus your build. Or weight minus build, subtracted from speed. So this is pretty standard. Sometimes they use strength. In Three Houses, it's strength divided by 5. In Path of Radiance, it's strength. In the Game Boy Advance games, it's constitution instead of build. But, you know, a weapon weighs 10. You've got 5 constitution. That's a -5 weight. Your speed is 12. 12 minus 5 is 7. That's your attack speed. You compare your attack speed to your enemy's attack speed. If it's 4 higher, you get 2 attacks. If theirs is 4 higher, they get 2 attacks. If it's within 4 or within 3 of each way, basically, then you just get 1 attack each. So, I think attack speed is pretty normal compared to modern games. Just sometimes con is different than strength. Attack speed for magic. So magical tomes don't use your constitution, so they will always subtract from your speed. That's kind of important to know. This did change later on. I'm pretty sure con, like in the Game Boy Advance games, a dark tome is affected by your character's constitution, if I remember correctly. Is it 3D or 2D? Super Nintendo, definitely 2D. Staff double cast. This is a unique mechanic for Thracia. I don't think it's in any other game. So when you're healing, and this works for at least all the healing staves, but maybe even the attack staves, like your sleep and your silence, there's a chance to do 2. So speed plus skill plus luck divided by 2% means you might get 2 healings off in a row, which is good because they can miss, which is something we'll probably see down here in a little bit. The name of the staves may or may not be translated like this. Heal... Oh, the only ones that can heal is heal, mend, and physic, I expect. Or heal, mend, recover. Like, you know, normally the healing staves, right? And if the first staff heals all HP, then you won't get the second attack. Okay. Thank you, Wikipedia, or Serene's Forest, for explaining all this. Next unique mechanic that we need to remember. Reaction. It's, I'm just going to call it a movement star for the most part, because in-game there's a little star ding-a-ling. Basically, you know how a dancer or a bard can refresh a unit so they take a second action? Well, some units will have a passive chance to just get that once per round for free. So they will have movement stars on their stat screen. Each one of those up to 5 is a times 5%. So you can have up to 25% chance of moving, doing an attack or a spell or whatever, getting a movement star effect, a 25% chance to go try again. And then you can move another time, move again and attack. They can't trigger multiple times in a row, I don't believe. I think it's 1 action, movement star, action, and that's it. Unless you get refreshed by a bard or a dancer, and then it's action, reaction, refresh from a bard, move again, action. That's action number 3. And you could, at that point, if you're lucky, get another reaction with your 25% or whatever, and technically have 4 moves in 1 turn. I think, and you probably can only have 1 dancer, so that's probably as far as you can take it. But that's, you know, pretty unlikely. Anyway, enemies will sometimes have these movement stars. Your characters will sometimes have them. This is a very important thing to keep track of, and it adds a lot of variability into how far enemies can move, how many attacks they can pull off. It's going to make things kind of hell. So we're going to have to really try to remember this and learn quickly and check for who's got movement stars, because this is going to throw you off if you've never played one of these games. It's like getting 2 turns in a row. We don't need to look at the damage formula as a whole lot. Physical damage is pretty normal. Defense, terrain bonuses. There's only one stat for magic, so there's no resistance stat. So magic strength and magic defense is the same attribute. Fair enough. There is a way to use the holy water, or magic water, which normally gives you resistance. In this game, though, because resistance is also magic attack, that means if you use it, you get stronger magic damage, which is a nice little effect. This seems to make it look like terrain gives you magic damage. We'll have to figure that one out. Normally, I would not expect being in a forest to give you more magical damage, but I assume it's just a negative, like if you're on a throne or something, it's like resistance. Like, yeah, that's probably all it really is. Should be here, but it's on the attack side too. I don't know, whatever. And then weapon might, effective bonus, you know, standard stuff. One thing that's kind of, like, this is the damage formula for criticals. Let's talk about criticals a little bit, because criticals are weird. So, criticals will deal double damage, sort of. In other Fire Emblems, it's your double damage after defense, so you'd go whatever your final attack power versus defense, you know, say your weapon got you to 10 might, 10 power total, and the enemy had 5 defense, you'd do 5 damage. And then if you had a critical, you'd do 10, because it would double it. That's kind of your standard easy model. Thracia doesn't work that way, though. It's your physical damage times your critical bonus, and then minus your enemy defense. So in the situation I just said, where 10 attack versus 5 defense, this would be 10 times 2 is 20, minus 5 is 15. So instead of doing 5 damage regularly, both situations are 5 damage regularly, but in Thracia, it's a 15 damage crit. In other games, it's a 10 damage crit. The main thing is criticals bypass defense, essentially, or mostly ignore defense. So that's pretty important. It means your armor knights and generals aren't really immune to critical hits, like they are in certain games where you hear all those 0 damage tinks. Speaking of criticals, there is a new stat in Thracia 776 that's not in any other game. There is, let's see if they mention it down here so I can just refer to it. It's, yeah, critical. Okay. There is it's going to be called different things depending on where you look. Pursuit critical coefficient, or follow-up critical modifier. There's a couple different names of it. So if you see PCC or FCM, it's probably referring to this. This is not your first attack, your second attack of the round, your pursuit attack, or your follow-up attack, if you have the attack speed. So hopefully you've got high attack speed. Then that second attack has a multiplier to your critical rate. So normally your critical rate, you know, you got a killer axe for 30%, you got some weapon skill, like some skill yourself, the enemy's got some luck reducing it, maybe you've got a critical rate of 20%, right? No big deal. Every attack would be 20% chance to crit. Easy, no math. If you had a pursuit critical of 5, which is the maximum, your first attack of the round would be 20%, the enemy would counterattack, and then your follow-up pursuit attack, you would have a 100% critical chance on your second attack. Now, that's a best case scenario, times 5 multiplier. It might just be times 1 or 2 or 3. I'm not even sure. 0 might just cancel it out entirely, so you don't get a crit. I don't even know. Maximum value during non-pursuit is 25. Like, there's math here I'm not going to get all into. But essentially, different characters have different coefficients, which means their follow-up attacks have higher chance to crit. Hopefully, all you'll need to remember is when you see this number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, remember that if they're doing 2 attacks, like if they're fast, they're getting double attacks, the second one could have a much higher crit rate than you're expecting. And the exact math, you know, there's some examples here. You could read through it. It's fine. Hopefully that covers the basics of pursuit multiplier, but yeah, that's a specifically Thracia mechanic. Just to wrap up this mechanic section, weapon triangle is a small modifier in Thracia, just +5, -5 for accuracy and evasion. In other games, it's much higher, like 10 or 20. So this is small. There's a standard weapon triangle, sword, axe, lance, and a weapon magic triangle, a magic weapon triangle, fire beats wind, beats thunder. Good to know. Also light and dark, essentially like divine magic, always beat elemental magic. I think that's the same as genealogy. Things like staves have a 60% accuracy. I thought there was a modifier. I think your attack accuracy is 60. I'm pretty sure healing staves is based on the magic stat. I can't remember where I read that. But if I remember correctly, when you're healing, there's a chance to miss on a healing staff now, which sucks. But I think as the character's either skill or magic goes up, they will eventually get to closer to 100% and not miss on their healing, eventually. It's probably in here somewhere. I don't want to spend too much more time. But I think... weapon ranks, experience, whatever. I'm not going to worry too much about it right now, but that's just another mechanic to remember as we go forward. We talked about charisma in the skills, support bonuses. There's a leadership star. Okay, this is a good one to point out. Leadership stars are army-wide, or at least faction-wide. Sometimes you might be fighting two different factions of enemy units, for instance. But for your party, say your main character, Leaf, has 2 leadership stars, let's just pretend. That would give him a 6 bonus into anything that says leadership. So 6 accuracy, 6 avoid, and that's probably it. So just avoid and evasion. Which is cool, which means if you've got a character that has a leadership star and you deploy them, everyone gets a little bit more accuracy and evasion, just passively. Everyone. Not in a radius like typically charisma or support would be. Like a 3-tile radius like others. Of course, the enemy also can have leadership bonuses, and they might have a bunch of 5-star generals that all give 15% accuracy and evasion to their army. So you want to, focus them down quickly. Oh, there's your staff accuracy. I skimmed right over it. So 60 is your base accuracy plus 4 times your skill. So you need 10 skill to get to 99%, and that's as good as it gets. There you go, easy peasy. But yeah, that's kind of a new one. Normally you don't have to worry about staff accuracy. Unless you're doing like a sleep or poison spell, normally you never miss. So that's kind of important. Okay. Is there anything else I really need to make sure I'm aware of here? Curse is like your Devil's Axe kind of thing. 21 minus luck %. Good to know. Yeah, Devil's Axe right there. Damage, the chance to just basically kill yourself. There's some of your stealing mechanics, exactly. We talked about that. Your capturing mechanics. Weapon ranks, we don't need to worry about that. Oh yeah, fatigue is new. There's so many mechanics in Thracia that are completely new. And yeah, we just got there. Good call, Nicholas. So for the first, I don't know exactly how many chapters. This doesn't apply until a third of the way through the game or something. But eventually there's a fatigue mechanic that will stop you from deploying characters, and it goes up every time they do anything. So every time you take an action, +1 fatigue, or more for certain staves. And if your fatigue level is higher than your max HP, you cannot participate in the next battle. So let's say you normally need 12 or 13 characters per battle, or map, something like that, whatever. Thracia has some pretty big maps. They might go up to like 15 or 16, but whatever. You normally want like a dozen or so main units. Because of the fatigue system, you're going to want to add a few extras so they can cycle out and rest. It's kind of like, some of you guys might have played Long War XCOM, which had like a fatigue system. It's kind of like that. Go on missions regularly, it builds up, and you take a mission off. There is an item that clears it, some sort of tonic or drink, depending on what they translated it to. So there is a couple ways to get around it, but yeah, they're Chapter 8 onwards. So anyway, S-Drink, or whatever they converted it to, gets you past it. This will probably screw me over, because unless you know ahead of time, like, what I'm worried about as a new player is there's going to be maps where you need a thief, or a healer with a warp staff or something. And if you fatigue them out at the wrong time, then you can't bring them on the map where you didn't know you needed them, but you did need them. So it's going to be a bit hit or miss. I'm not sure. I might look up a bit of a guide to give me some idea of when to let people rest. Like, there's going to probably be, like, for experienced Thracia players, I'm sure, there are specific maps where they're like, don't bring your thief on this map because you need them next time. And don't bring your main healer on this map because you need them on the next map. So there's probably some meta strategy for some of the stuff that I may or may not look up. We'll see how I feel. We might just wing it and see what happens. Experience, blah, blah, blah. No big deal there. We're not going to worry about that right now. So I think that's all the core mechanics. Fatigue is completely new. Like, there's probably 5 or 6 mechanics that are completely unique to Thracia. Capturing enemies, the fatigue, the staff accuracy. There's a lot of stuff that's unique, and I did want to spend, like, we spent like a 40-minute episode here trying to cover it. There are more parts that I'm sure I have missed, and as we play through the game, we will look things up as needed. But hopefully that gives myself and any new viewers to the series a bit of an idea of what we're getting ourselves into. Like I said at the beginning or earlier on, Thracia is not really known as an easy Fire Emblem. I mean, there are, like, the more modern Fire Emblems have, like, higher difficulty modes, like Lunatic mode or whatever, some of the crazy names they came up with for some of the advanced ones. I'm not sure how Thracia compares to some of the Lunatic modes of the more recent games, but as far as base difficulty is concerned, first time blind playing this game at the regular difficulty without turning on double experience or anything, it should be considerably harder than like the Game Boy Advance games or Genealogy of Holy War. Definitely Path of Radiance. You know, it's one of the hard ones comparatively, and we'll see how we feel when we get to the end, if this was the hardest or what. But yeah, that's kind of my intro to Thracia 776. Hopefully that covers the main points anyway. Next episode will be episode 1, and we will actually go through the introduction story and start playing this game. So, thanks for listening. Hope you learned a thing or two, and I will be continuing to learn as I play through. So, wish me luck, future tubers, and the live tubers. The plan will be to be streaming this game, so the live tubers can watch and laugh with me as I learn or fail miserably. They'll see all the failed attempts and runs where we have to restart. The live tubers will get the best me, the best version of BlueAnkylo. All right, folks. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. I'll see you for the real game next episode.